everyone, this is Ms. Holmes giving you an overview or a snapshot of my course of study. I'm using Edmodo as my learning management system, and this is for a 7th grade social studies class at a public middle school in Middle Tennessee. There are 30 students in the 5th period class, and in this class period there are 17 males and 13 females. All of my students are between 11 and 13 years old. Additionally, I have 6 special education students in this class, which is about 20%. There's one recently transitioned ELL student and one student with chronic absenteeism. This group of students is extremely enthusiastic about the use of technology and integrating it into their class, but they need help with producing work. They prefer experiential activities such as PBL, and they absolutely love group work. As a whole, they struggle with written expression, but their literacy skills have dramatically improved since the beginning of the school year, and this course of study is being presented in May. The purpose of my course of study is for a flipped classroom with the activities done asynchronously. 7th grade covers world history starting at the fall of the Roman Empire in about the early to mid 400s, and this unit comes at the end of our school year and discusses the exploration of the Americas. Prior to this lesson, students have studied the fall of Rome, the Islamic world, the African trading empires, China, Japan, and the Middle Ages in Europe, and all of those units are between the years of 400 to 1500 AD. Following 1500 AD, we cover the Renaissance and Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, and the Enlightenment, and then we go across to Mesoamerica. This unit is for the Age of Exploration and builds on skills and concepts from every unit, specifically including mapping and map skills, the importance of trade routes, cultural diffusion, and the spread of technology. This unit sets students up for their 8th grade history curriculum, as 8th grade begins with the colonization of North America. The standards for today's lesson, there are 2. It's 7.73 and 7.74 from the Tennessee 7th grade social studies standards. 7.73 says identify the voyages of discovery, the locations of the routes, and the influence of technology in the developments of a new European worldview, including cartography, the compass, the caravel, and the astrolabe. 7.74, examine the impact of the exchanges of plants, animals, technology, culture, ideas, and disease among Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas in the 15th and 16th centuries, and the major economic and social effects on each continent. Now, those standards are pretty wordy and not really kid-friendly, so our I can statements are pretty simple. The first I can statement for this lesson says I can use a map scale to estimate the distance for various routes of exploration. And the second, I can describe the Columbian Exchange and how new products and ideas affected both the New World and the Old World. Now, this class in Edmodo was set up near the end of our school year as a way for students to pilot a one-to-one classroom for the next school year. So when we're looking at Edmodo, you can see that it is my 5th period, 7th grade social studies. I have one assignment in the assignment center. Here's how we invite our students to our group with our code. When we scroll down, the newest posts are at the top, so we would need to go all the way down for our first post. Since Edmodo is very similar to Facebook and I wanted a short learning curve with my students, one of the first things that I did was set up a poll for them to take. Polls are an option on Facebook as well as the reply back feature. This poll asks my students which social media platform is your favorite. Make sure to reply to the post with an explanation. So I've got just a couple of votes. You've got Facebook and Twitter on there, and you can see I replied to set my students up as an example, and then I had a couple of other people reply as well. When we scroll up, you will see my first discussion post introducing students. I asked them to upload a picture to their profile and then reply to this post and describe their picture, why did they choose it, and who was in their picture. Make sure that they take the social media poll, as well as reply to the poll with an explanation of their answer choice. What makes it their favorite? Why do you like that one over others? And make sure to reply to your classmates. My 7th graders love social media, and they love to talk about social media and describe it to other people. They've taught me a lot about how to use social media, so I thought it was important for them to be able to discuss something simple and that they know a lot about before we moved into the rest of our unit. The next thing that we do is the students, they would have seen these posts in order. This was a lesson for them to do on here. This would been the first post of that. They're supposed to watch today's lesson over the Columbian Exchange, and then they were completing a couple of activities. There's an imports and exports assignment. There are some discussion questions that they could answer by replying to this post right here. And then they had to make sure to answer both questions using complete sentences, as well as complete a quick quiz, kind of like the exit ticket for this online asynchronous lesson. So students would have clicked on this EduCreations video. We'll click on that. It takes us to EduCreations. We'll watch just a little bit. Hi everyone, we are picking up with our Age of Exploration unit, and today we are specifically focusing on some map skills and the Columbian Exchange. This will be a shorter presentation, and then you will have a practice activity, a couple discussion questions, and a quick quiz on Edmodo. Our last lesson introduced you to those European explorers. We sometimes call them conquistadors if they are from Spain. I always like to put an agenda at the beginning of my lesson so students know what to expect. I usually number it 1, 2, 3, 4, or however many I need for that day so the students can kind of go down like a checklist. With this lesson, students had the opportunity to watch me practice doing a couple of map skills and then try them themselves. New World is going to be over here in the Americas. Old World is going to be over on the other side. So Old World is going to include Europe and Africa and Asia, okay? When we're looking at this with Edmodo or EduCreations, I like to annotate on the screen so my students can follow along. They watched me find the key as well as find the scale over here, mapping out the trade routes, and then also measuring distance using that scale. I did have the students practice that before we moved on. We've been practicing it all year long, but I think it's an important skill to continue to reinforce as we are moving through. Once we practiced with our maps, we had another opportunity on their own before we started discussing the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange is that series of imports and exports that goes from the New World to the Old World, and we discussed imports and exports. And then we started talking about what things came over as well. The discussion questions, how did this benefit or harm Europe, and how did this benefit or harm Mesoamerica? Once students finished this video, they could watch it as many times as they needed to if they were struggling with the map skills or some of the information before they go back to Edmodo. And if you remember from earlier, they had an imports and exports practice activity and some discussion questions. When we're looking at the practice activity, the PDFs are on Edmodo. They can click on them, and then they also turn in the assignment on here. So we'll click on the export certificates. This is from a primary source, and the certificate is in London, exported on these dates. And you'll note it does tell you that spellings are taken directly from that primary source, so some of the things will be spelled in a little bit different fashion than the kids are used to, such as cinnamon, for example. But the students can kind of see things that were exported, and then on the other certificate it did have imports as well, and then the pounds that are over here. You can see a lot of stuff was going to be imported and exported. The activity questions are here. It's from a collection of letters for the improvements of husbandry and trade by John Houghton, and it was published in the late 1600s. And when we're looking at those, it has several questions on there. It asks them, what products do we still use? How much of these products was imported at that time? Where do we think these were grown before they reached London? What would the English make out of cotton? It kind of walks them through some of this process. This was to set them up for the next day when we did a PBL activity over the Columbian Exchange. What I liked about this activity is it did walk them through the primary source, and it explained both the import side and the export side, and talked about several of the products that are going to set up their study of 8th grade, such as tobacco and cotton. This was turned in on Edmodo, and I did set a due date so that students could get it in on time. They can always reply with questions as well as reach out over Remind. There was a quiz as well, and with that quiz we've got a breakdown of the questions. It was just 5 questions long. The questions were pretty short. You can see no one has submitted it yet. When we are looking at the quiz questions, we can go to my library and click on my quizzes. You'll see my exploration quiz. What is the Columbian Exchange? What is an import? What's an export? How would it have changed the diets of Europeans and Mesoamericans, and was it a fair trading system? This opinion question right here is something we've been working on all year long in both social studies and their ELA classes, making sure they can back up their opinions with text evidence. Once students had completed this activity, the next assignment on their class was for the next day. They did an exit ticket on Socrative. I've set it up so students can go to socrative.com. They go to that room name right there, and when we are on Socrative, on our dashboard, you have the different options for setting things up. This one I set up as an exit ticket. My students do also like to use the space race, and I can see the live results as they come in. For this exit ticket, it had questions from the entire unit over Mesoamerica and the Age of Exploration. So you've got questions that talk about the main motive at the beginning, and I did give explanations on there as well. What happened to the Aztec and the Inca? What is mercantilism? And then there are 3 short answers at the end for students to type in an answer. What I like about Socrative is students can do an individual assessment, or I can put them into groups and have a more competitive assessment as well. When they are submitted, I get the live results, so I can kind of see the breakdown of how my students do, which I really like. That is the end of my course of study over the Age of Exploration in Mesoamerica.